All right, Dale, and everyone joining us, we'll go ahead and get started right on time at 12 o'clock sharp. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Leah Laney, and I'll be co-presenting with Dell Nuss. Dell will be the main presenter, as Dell is our UniForce specialist. Dell and I both know the ins and outs of UniForce, as we've been involved from the very beginning, basically, not only with the sales process of assuring that you get what you need, but also troubleshooting and completing several installs on about every drill configuration. So Dell, if you want to get us started, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Leah. I'm excited to be able to share and discuss with you a proven system that will dramatically change your John Deere 50, 60, 90, and Pro Series drill. And we're going to provide evidence that the UniForce system pays for itself. The John Deere single disc opener is extremely popular in North America and is our recommended choice for low disturbance no-till seeding, but it's not without its challenges and shortcomings, especially in no-till. Feel free to post questions in the Q&A box and we will address them at the end of the presentation. So the big question and the obvious one is, why UniForce? The radial arm design with a coil spring for open or downforce lacks the ability to provide consistent pressure to the opener blade through the range of motion. This pressure can vary from on top or in excess of 800 PSI, which is going to provide crazy excessive compaction on the upstroke, and when we go the other direction on the downstroke, it can drop to zero, to nothing, and then you have seed laying on top of the ground. This is a significant problem when you compare it to a parallel link design like what the planters use, which may only vary 20% from top to bottom. When individual rows on the John Deere row unit need to drop down for even a slight depression, like a sprayer track or a combine track, the coil spring immediately relaxes and down pressure can drop to almost nothing. Residue cutting and seed placement are greatly compromised. Hairpinning of residue and inconsistent seed placement is the result. This is one reason, and probably the main reason, why it's common to have to up the seeding rate with a drill versus a planter. You're trying to compensate for these problems to achieve your desired stand count. The side note here, the picture in the lower left, the guy in the striped shirt, that's Dwayne Beck, and the 750 box drill has UniForce installed on one half of it, and it belongs to Dakota Lakes Research. And Dakota Lakes is also testing UniForce for it as well. How did UniForce, how it began? About 8 or 9 years ago, the late Matt Hagney, Exapta founder, was having a conversation with Louis Unruh, one of his agronomy clients and a longtime no-tiller. They were discussing the challenges of no-till seeding small grains and cover crops across terraced ground in central Kansas with a 1590 drill, specifically no-till seeding across or against the terraces. Because of the 1590's low disturbance to the soil and the residue from the single disc opener, seeding over terraces had become an approved and accepted practice. This greatly increased productivity and efficiency over the traditional seeding with the contour. But because contour seeding was slow and inefficient due to the short runs with lots of turning and wasted seed from overlap on all the odd-shaped patches that were between the terraces. However, this new practice of up and over the terraces, even with the help of GPS and auto steer, presented a new set of challenges with seed placement, especially in the terrace channels and on the back side of the terrace berm, as illustrated in this slide. Almost always, you would find seed on top of the ground in the bottom of the terrace channel. Due to the stretched frame, double rank design with carrier wheels front and back, which was a radical change from the end wheel drill, Often the back sides of an aggressive terrace berm would have bald spots, which was caused by seed on top of the ground from this stretched frame holding the openers out of the ground as it crossed over the terrace berm. Hydraulic pressure from the rock shaft in this scenario is of no help at all. Both Unruh and Hagney recognized and agreed that the flaw in the opener design was the coil spring. This massive-looking spring would quickly relax when the opener needed to drop down even into a shallow depression, not to mention the miles of terraces on Unruh's farm. At some point, Unruh posed the question, why not use a hydraulic cylinder in place of the coil spring? Hagney contemplated the idea and accepted the challenge. This John Deere design flaw has been remedied with UniForce by removing the coil spring that runs nearly parallel with the opener arm and replacing it with the UniForce cylinder. Now, constant down pressure from the UniForce cylinder can be maintained through the full range of motion of the radial arm. The UniForce cylinder also adds an additional 2 inches of travel to the row unit, which is split equally between the top and bottom of the stroke. The result is a huge improvement in consistently placing seed where you want it, to the point that one of our UniForce customers in Indiana has reported cutting soybean seeding rates by as much as 20%. He now uses seeding rates with his drill that are comparable to planters. And depending on what your seed costs are, just on seed cost alone, that can be a $5 to $10 an acre savings. 2 years ago in 2019, in Kay County, Oklahoma, we conducted a 300-acre side-by-side trial, again in soybeans, that showed a consistent 2.8 bushel increase by using UniForce. Putting that into perspective, according to the USDA, the average soybean yield for Kay County, Oklahoma is 28 bushel. So doing the math, a 2.8 bump over the county average is a 10% increase. Taking that times $10 a bushel, that's $28 an acre. And we all know that today's bean prices are higher than that. But on this Oklahoma trial, we installed UniForce on one half of a 40-foot 1890 air seeder, which would then in turn give us 40-foot strips with UniForce, and the next 40-foot strip would be the stock or without UniForce. The crop was then harvested with a 40-foot draper head using RTK auto steer on the combine, and the yield data was accumulated on over 300 acres. This was real-time on-farm testing. The fields were all half-mile passes on 80 and 160-acre fields. This was not a small cherry-picked quarter-acre test plot that was protected down by the river. What are the problems of lack of downforce? The obvious one is going to be poor control of depth of cut. Along with that will be misplaced seeds when the opener doesn't have enough pressure to keep the gauge wheel firmly on the soil surface to prevent sidewall blowout. The trajectory of the seed becomes flatter, which would be the upper part of the what's illustrated here. And the heel of the seed boot then runs above the soil line. And also when the seed boot is tilted back due to the lack of downforce, the angle of the seed tab changes and it becomes less effective and can allow seeds to escape, especially on air seeders. Lifting of the soil from the rotating opener must be compressed under the gauge wheel to form a well-defined sidewall that stays intact until the seed is dropped and firmed by the firming wheel. There's a little triangle area there between the back of the seed boot, the opener blade, and the firming wheel. That's the area of concern where sidewall blowout would potentially could occur. So the seeds then could be embedded in the sidewall, or worse yet, it could allow dry dirt to cover the seed before it's pressed into the moisture by the firming wheel. Down pressure is critical to avoid misplaced seeds. This slide demonstrates how seed can become embedded in the sidewall, and this is due to lack of down pressure because the gauge wheel was not pressing the soil down like it should. Without UniForce, owners and operators of stock OEM drills are forced to compensate for these shortcomings of the design by cranking up the pressure on the rock shaft to excessive rates, generally pushing it well into the red on the gauge. This then requires additional ballast or weights to offset raising the back wheels of the drill off the ground. If you run with the back wheels off the ground, the opener arm is then vertical and the angle of the seed boot is way off to the other extreme, causing the seed boot to run on its heel and accelerating the wear on the seed boot. Extra weight on 3-section drills and box drills can easily be added. But the 5-section drills and the CCS drills are much more difficult to add weights due to the clearance when folding and the interference of the CCS hopper. Without the option to add weights on the CCS and 5-section drills, those are in desperate need of the advantages of UniForce. This slide shows our Exapta weight bracket, and again, this is only for the 3-section cart drills. Another common question is how much pressure can UniForce provide? UniForce provides up to 800 pounds of actual downforce throughout the full range of motion versus 400 pounds or half that rate with the OEM springs that can vary dramatically through that same range of motion. Yet UniForce can be adjusted to be far gentler when the soil is soft or mellow. Some of the other benefits from UniForce: reduced wear on the main pins. Because the row units are running much more steady instead of jumping up and down, there's less wear on main pins, less wear on the depth adjusting mechanism. Another benefit and report is that our customers are able to run faster ground speed. It's quite common to hear that they're able to drive a mile an hour faster and do a better job than without UniForce. Also, it will reduce the sidewall compaction because the pressure never exceeds what it's set at. Unlike the OEM coil spring, that when it raises up to go over, say again, a terrace berm, it will go to max pressure without changing anything. And another benefit is the extra 2 inches of travel or stroke that can make a huge difference in the terrace channels. A Nebraska UniForce customer reported this. He said, and I quote, "I knew there was something different the first day I went to the field with UniForce. There were no blackbirds in my field picking up seed from the terrace channels." Hydraulic requirements for UniForce. It only requires 4 to 8 gallons per minute. Because UniForce uses one-way cylinders that only supply down pressure, the gallon per minute requirement is much lower because once the system is energized, we are simply maintaining standby pressure. A low volume of oil is all that's needed the majority of the time. Unlike the blower motor on the carts, that's a huge oil hog. They use upwards of 25 gallons per minute. Plus, the high volume of oil demanded by the blower can cause heating issues on hot days for some tractors. Most tractors produced in the last 20 years can handle both. When using Power Beyond for your air drill, UniForce will need to be run on a separate remote. If you have an older tractor that struggles with hot oil, consider adding our heat exchanger that we offer. How many remotes am I operating when turning around on the headlands? Only one. The remote for the rock shaft is used to raise and lower the row units. Ideally, we prefer UniForce to be on its own separate remote. Then the UniForce remote can stay engaged and energized constantly, even when in transport. This way, the row units on the wings won't flop around in transport, because without hydraulic pressure on them, they will. So you don't have an extra remote on your tractor? It is possible to combine or plumb together UniForce with the rock shaft. The biggest downside to that is it's just a little slower cycle time when you're turning around on the headlands. How do I set the down pressure on my UniForce system? To set the down pressure, first we're going to adjust the rock shaft to 2000 PSI. That's the manual setting that's always been on your drill there on the left. And the reason we do that is we want the rock shaft to fully rotate or fully extend when we lower the row units. Then we fine tune the UniForce pressure off the manual control valve on the manifold block that's pictured here, which is commonly used on the air seeders. A general or common working range is 800 to 1500 PSI. The next slide shows what we call the line body valve, and this valve is utilized on box drills and the single rank CCS drills. In many ways, UniForce is a fairly simple system. There's no electronics unless you opt for the electric in-cab adjustment kit. This is an electric motorized valve that replaces the manual knob on the valve block. UniForce is designed to be a rugged, durable system. We've yet to sell our first UniForce seal kit. Why an accumulator? No matter how big the hydraulic pump is on your tractor, the flow through the half-inch tips at the coupler is limited to 25 gallons per minute. So breaking it down, that's 0.4, that's less than a half a gallon per second of flow. At 6.5 miles an hour, you cover 9.5 feet in 1 second. This may be too slow if many cylinders have to collapse and dump oil, like when you hit a terrace square or straight on, and the entire rank or section needs to change all the UniForce cylinders simultaneously. In the bottom, the pictures show the 2.5 gallon accumulator, which is what we recommend for the air seeders. Accumulators can supply 1.5 gallons of flow in a millisecond. So the accumulators make up the difference when we need to do those quick changes. Another question, and common question, is can you go without accumulators on your terraces? The answer is yes. And it's because it's not common to go straight over a terrace anyway. If you're going over it at an angle, there's little or no issue. The big factor or concern is when we're only using one rank, be it a single rank CCS drill or be it a double rank drill with one rank locked up. The double rank drills, when they're using both ranks for seeding, have cross flow hoses to connect front and back. And going over terraces with a situation like this, you're generally dumping oil in one rank when the other rank needs it. So it just transfers back and forth from one rank to the other. Coming soon, downforce monitoring. We have 4 beta systems that are currently being built to test this spring. Final production for public sale will be able to retrofit onto existing UniForce systems. We've looked at controlling downforce on the individual openers, but it's just cost prohibitive to pursue at this time. We've got a sneak peek of our monitor, and most drills are going to have 4 sensors monitoring the downforce across the drill. And Leah, did you have some comments you wanted to share on this?
Yeah, just to explain it a little bit more of what it would look like is you would install 4 sensors evenly spaced throughout your entire drill from the left to the right. So, every 8-10 openers or so. So that would be your, and here's where it would display your pressure. And you could also adjust your down pressure by adding or by subtracting or adding how many ever pounds you wanted to add to it. And then you could set your alarm at whatever you wanted it to be at. If you weren't hitting 1,500 pounds, then your alarm would go off, or, you can set that however you'd like of the margins. And then here's where it would show you that you're recording your data. And then this icon right here would be green when the rock shaft is engaged. So you would have peace of mind as well that your rock shaft is engaged, showing your miles per hour, and you'd be able to add in the farm name, who the client was, and the field. So we're pretty excited about this, and hopefully this spring goes well to where we can market it soon, and hopefully this fall. So stay tuned on that.
Thanks, Leah. The next several slides are just going to show different layouts and different things on our system. This is a picture of what we call the trays. The header hoses that supply the oil to the drop hose that goes to each cylinder. The header hoses are generally a 3/4 inch diameter hose on most of the air seeders. Once they fill with oil, they become very heavy and they need support. The trays also keep the hoses in place while the drill is folded and during transport. These header hoses are held to the tray by a rubber line clamp that is then bolted directly to the tray. The next slide shows another shot of wing trays with the header hose, and then you can see then it goes down and connects to the drop hose, then connects to the cylinder itself. Next slide shows bridge hoses, and there's also a picture that bridge hoses that connect each section at the hinge points. Some of these trays are located lower, like the left-hand picture here shows this is off of a 5-section drill. Because of the 5 sections in the folding, the trays are going to be much lower than they are on a 3-section drill. So then this bridge hose would be in need of a sheath to protect it from stubble and cover crops. Again, on 3-section hose, those will be much higher and on the 3-section drill, and they're not going to have the need for the protective covering. This is just another overhead view of what would be the rear rank on an air seeder, again showing the header, the drop hoses, and the UniForce cylinders. Next slide has
and Dale, I'll just add that every configuration of a drill is set up a little bit different. Like Dale said, this is trays for a 3-section. On 5-section drills, we don't have trays on the back ranks. So every drill is set up a little bit different, just so you're aware.
Yes, thank you, Leah. This is a box drill, and box drills don't have a need for trays. The main reason being is they don't have wings, they don't fold. Also, they're going to be smaller. Box drills, we use a smaller 1/2-inch diameter hose that goes from one cylinder to the next. Which does not need the tray because they are very short hoses. So some of you may ask, is there a need for, or you see a need for more pressure in the tractor or the cart tracks? We can do this. We can customize things, and we do that by running another circuit to those openers, which would require using 4 cartridges on the large valve block on the air seeders. And you're basically creating a mini UniForce system inside of the larger system and you would just be controlling or adjusting the pressure on those rows, be it 4 or 6 or 8 rows, however many we need for the tracks. And the box drills and the single rank CCS drills with the line body, we would just add an additional line body valve, which again would be dedicated just to those special rows. How long does it take to install UniForce? A typical example of a 3-section drill with, let's say, 48 openers on it, we could be looking at 30 to 40 hours for the install, or 3/4 to 1 hour per opener. Box drills will go a little bit faster because there's no need for trays on them. 5-section drills with, say, 72 openers, you could be looking at 50 to 70 hours for the install. Now, out of that install time, we're counting or figuring that there's going to be 20, maybe even 30% of your time is going to be learning. It's going to be referencing prints, looking and reading the instructions, and just figuring out where things go. Once you figure out where things go, then things start to go, you can pick up the pace and things go faster. But when you first open up that box and that pallet that comes to you, the number of fittings and hoses can seem overwhelming. To help you get past the panic attack here, it may be helpful to look at some of our YouTube videos and keep them around or accessible for reference to help you understand, and we will walk you through the installation process in those YouTube videos. And then the last step is purging the air and chasing leaks, and that can add another hour to your time. A helpful hint, when you get to that point, you've got everything done and you've energized the system with oil and you're looking for leaks, you'll want to keep a bag of floor dry around if you're working inside, and have plenty of shop rags on hand. And another helpful trick is have a couple cans of aerosol brake cleaner, so that when you're done, spray those oily areas on your drill frame down with brake clean. It does not harm the paint, but it cuts the oil so that you don't have that dirty, oily buildup when you go to the field with it. The next slide is just going to be an example of a print for tray positioning. Again, this is all part of the instruction package that will come along with your order to show you where the different ones in each section or size of drill will have a different print for it. This one's a 36-foot drill. A 42-footer will be different, and the 5 sections will be even different from that. So there's a special print for each specific make and model and dimension of drill. The next slide shows what would be what we call the schematic for header hose assembly. These assembly prints have been verified and installed on every conceivable configuration of drills. We know they work. We recommend assembling the header hoses, or this header hose string that you would see here, ahead of time. Put the fittings together finger tight. Once you have them assembled finger tight, then you would lay them out on the drill or in the trays. And then the next step would be attach the drop hoses to the header hose and the other end of the drop hose to the UniForce cylinder. If you see a way that you want to route something a little different with the parts that are provided, that's fine. It's much easier to do it now when everything is finger tight than when we have everything tightened up and full of oil, not to mention or to emphasize that it's much safer to do the changes when the hoses are still finger tight and dry before you put the oil in them. Once they're charged with oil, be very, very careful of any changes because there will be extreme pressure to deal with. But once we have that everything in place, we'll want to do a test fold on the drills with wings. When we fold things up, We want to go very carefully and very slowly and watch our clearances at the hinge point. It's amazing how tight things get when we fold the wings up. And ideally, you need to try and work that so only one wing folds at a time. Generally, you start the folding process and then stop your hydraulic remote and let one wing generally settles back down to the ground so that you can then control the other wing. Because at last, if you don't and you raise them simultaneously, once they go past center, there's no stopping them. We also suggest holding these header hoses in place with zip ties in the trays, because it's much easier to move and adjust them when they're zip tied down versus when you use the rubber line clamps. Once those rubber line clamps are installed, those header hoses do not move. Install service. We're ready to do the job for you. Our experienced crew has traveled to at least 8 states in the last 2 years doing UniForce installs on every size and configuration imaginable. Our smallest one is a 3-point test plot drill that only had 8 openers on it. And our largest one is a 60-foot 5-section drill, 7.5-inch spacing, that's 96 openers. Our crew's ready to install UniForce systems all year long, and we're booking installs now. This experienced team will do a turnkey job start to finish. All you have to do is have a tractor hooked up to the drill and have some extra oil, hydraulic oil available to charge the system. We do the rest. We remove the springs, we install the hoses, the cylinders, the trays, we check the clearances when folding, we charge the system, purge the air, and check for leaks. For many of you, installation is one of the biggest hesitations about purchasing UniForce. We know what to do and we know how to make it fit together properly. When we leave, your UniForce system is ready to go to the field, and you can rest assured it will work properly from day one. Installation cost is calculated at a rate of 13% of the invoice. A little bit of history about the development and testing of UniForce started in 2015. We want to give a big shout out to Alan Oftenberg, that's who's pictured on the right, for working with Exapta and the testing and of the first prototype, which, by the way, is still operational on Alan's drill today. And on the left, that's a picture of Louis Unruh, who was part of the original idea and concept. And in the middle is a picture of the late Matt Hagney. Our next slide just shows UniForce systems by state in North America. And actually, I think this picture has one more state in it. We actually have a system in the state of Oregon that didn't get colored in. The next slide shows it's a fun one. I like this one. We've got 130 systems sold, and we have 130 satisfied customers. Leah, you want to share a few comments on that?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. These systems range from investing $10,000s of dollars to sometimes $45,000, $50,000, some of the larger systems. So that's a really big investment, and we understand that. So to have, we're not blowing smoke here, but to have 130 satisfied customers out of that many that's purchased them is phenomenal, really. And I have not had one person report back to us that they regret their investment. So that just speaks volumes. Being in the business for almost 8 years, you have products that you have at least a small percentage of some unsatisfied customers. So for UniForce to be 100% satisfaction just really speaks volumes. And I grabbed a few of these testimonials to post them on here, but on our website, we have several more that you can go read through. And that being said, if you want to speak to any of our customers, majority of them are more than willing to share their experience. And so we would have to verify with them, but you're more than welcome to inquire with us, and we can get somebody for you to contact to just talk through the process and their experience with it. So we encourage you to do that.
Thanks, Leah. It's been really enjoyable over the last couple of years, especially being involved with some of these installs, to be able to interact with the customers and build those friendships and relationships and get to know their operation. And that's just one of the side benefits for Leah, myself, and our install team. But let's talk about some of the programs. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, many of these guys posted on here, and many more of them, I mean, they've become really good friends. You go through all the troubleshooting and sometimes FaceTime calls, and, you name it. Just our support is there, and a lot of these people have become really good friends of ours. So yeah, it's been a very fun experience.
Yeah, so true. Let's talk about a few of our UniForce programs. Again, we just recap the installation service. That's figured off of 13%. But that also includes, takes care of the shipping. We bring the product, the whole system with us. We're removing the springs, and we can't guarantee that it's going to stay at this rate forever. There's a high likelihood that we may be raising the price come fall. Another program we're offering is the 6.5% cash rebate. If you're able to write a check for that system, we'll knock 6.5% off the top for cash. And then we do offer some 0% financing. It's a 1-year program, a third down, a third in 6 months, and the last third a year from now. And that comes along with a $150 doc fee or processing fee that goes with it. We have previous webinars, whether it's the one from last week or from last year or years past. Those are all accessible on our website. And we also want you to join us next week for the final third part of this 3-part presentation on air seeders. And that's going to be next Wednesday. That's at Wednesday the 27th at noon. And also, don't forget, we've got DVDs available. There's tons of information in these DVDs to go through and comb through and just soak in. We have newsletters. Again, there's a mountain of information that you can access on our website. Some of these newsletters, they may be 6, 8, 10 years old, but the information is just as valuable and pertinent today as it was when it was written. Social media. It's we want to connect with you on social media. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and stay in touch. And last, we want to hear from you. It's important that we get your feedback. It's important that we're able to answer the questions that you have, whether it's in regard to UniForce or any of the other growing lineup of products that we're offering. And last of all, we want to thank you for attending today. Again, remember, we've got one more part next Wednesday, the 27th at noon, and we're going to jump into the question and answer part now. Let's take a look here. Okay, we've got a customer that's asking about row cleaners with UniForce. And yes, they would be compatible with each other. The question is, are we looking at down pressure for the X opener row cleaner? No, not at this time. But yes, you could be able to. There's enough room and clearance to run the row cleaner in conjunction with UniForce.
And I'll add to that. I have two customers in Canada who are doing that. They're running the Eric's row cleaners along with UniForce. We do send shorter cables for those row cleaners, and they're getting along very well. Very happy and seeing great results. So, and those are two customers that would be willing to talk with you if you had any additional questions, if you wanted to talk to a producer, firsthand. And, we might talk with Eric's about potentially adding hydraulics to those row cleaners. It might be something we could look into for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I missed the question ahead of it. The question is, does the system work with TrueSet? And to be quite honest, I'm not familiar with the TrueSet system, so I'm not aware that it would interchange or work with TrueSet.
And I'm not either. From what I recall, I think it has to do with tillage implements potentially. I'm not as familiar with it as well, but we can definitely look into it, and you're more than willing to email us and we can talk further to get you some answers on that.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we do have a reply on the chat side. TrueSet is on the newer, larger drills, like the N-series drill that's come out yet. So as of today, to answer that question, no, we do not interact with TrueSet, but it is obviously something we'll need to look at.
Yeah, and as far as our monitoring down pressure, I saw someone comment, excited to hear that you'll be coming out with a sensor-based active pressure system, and yeah, we are too. So yeah, stay tuned.
And again, I just want to offer our availability. Again, any of our guys that are on the sales line, any of our sales reps are able to and are well versed on UniForce. They can answer questions just like we've done today. They would be can work up a quote for you on your drill, the number of openers you have, and your drill configuration, and so that you've got an idea on what that's going to cost.
And so someone commented that TrueSet allows you to adjust down pressure on the rock shaft from the cab. So I don't see why you wouldn't be able to run it, along with this, because you're keeping UniForce separate from your rock shaft adjustment. So we'll verify. We'll confirm that, but I do not foresee any issues with that. Another question was, how important is an accumulator on a double rank 1890 30 foot?
The first question is, do you have terraces? How important is it if you're solid seating with a double rank drill? It's not going to be as important or as critical as if it's running with one rank locked up or if it's a CCS drill. So again, it just depends on your conditions. If you've got a lot of aggressive terraces, I like the comfort of knowing that the accumulator will keep you covered. The other option that's out there is you could start out without it. If you felt you needed it later, an accumulator could be added very easily at a later date.
Yeah, basically the main question is, do you have terraces? So if you do, you probably want it, but I think that's all the questions so far.
Yeah, there's a few more that surfaced in the Q&A box. Do we have any pics of the side-by-side with and without UniForce? I'm assuming you're saying the pictures of the growing crop. you know, sad to say, we didn't get the photos, we didn't get the pictures, but it's something we want to be looking at. And we've also got a question about the rough cost for downforce monitoring. I don't have that yet. That's a big unanswered question yet.
We only have the beta testing pricing, and that's not really anything we're publishing yet. So as far as when we bring it to the market, yeah, we do not have that completely configured yet.
We've got a question for box drills installs. Do you recommend raising the drill to help with clearance? Now, I'm assuming that question is, okay, for installing UniForce on box drills. I've seen that done. Anytime you raise any drill, any piece of machinery, just make sure you've got it supported correctly, that it can't move, that it can't roll off the blocks, and that the blocks that you're using are strong enough to support it. So be very, very careful when you do that. The installs, I've done several installs on box drills, and I just roll around on the ground and do it. So it's not that bad, but raising a drill up could help.
Yeah, it would definitely make it easier.
I think there was another question about the yield advantage. Where did it go? I saw it.
Yeah, what kind of yield difference do you see in UniForce versus not?
Yes, I'd go back and reference our trial in Oklahoma. We've documented 2.8 bushel difference, and the only variable, the only change there was UniForce. Everything else stayed the same. Seeding rate, fertilization, that all stayed consistent. The only difference in the side-by-side was one half of the drill had UniForce, the other half did not. So, like I say, we can verify 2.8 bushel in soybeans in north central Oklahoma. Any other comments? Well, again, it's been a treat. It's been a pleasure to offer this information. This has been one of the products that I think is, I would just like to think that Matt would be smiling right now if he were able to be a part of this today.
Yeah, it's come a long ways, and it's exciting to see how many we have out there. And I don't know that Dale showed on the map of how many systems in the states that we have in North America, but we also have several in Australia, probably pushing 10 to 15 systems now, probably closer to 15 running in Australia. So it's really growing and taking off. This system completely transforms the drill. It gets it to just about as close to a planer as you can possibly get. So, okay, well, I think that's all the questions for now. So we will wrap it up. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and hope that you found this valuable and worthwhile. Stay safe out there and take care, and email us or call us if you have questions or would like a quote. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again.